Hi, everybody. Welcome in, welcome in. Apologies for starting a couple of minutes late. We were having some technical difficulties with one of our speakers, but we're working on alleviating that now, so no big deal. Welcome, everyone, to the Women for Women in Tech Talk. This is our third episode of the series. And the purpose of these talks is to just walk through different journeys that women in technology have. My name is Alicia. I'm going to be your host for today. And we're actually trying to put a focus this month, particularly on mothers in technology. And so I brought along a little co-host as a surprise. She's awfully sleepy, but she says hi. It's not the same as any old motherhood, but it's my version of motherhood. So she's tired, but she says hello. Let's see who we have today. Oh, wow. Lots of people. Welcome in. Welcome in. Omari, Terry, I don't think y'all have ever missed one, so thank you so much. I love having fans. It looks like we have a few people kind of joining in as well. So um, the primary purpose of this is, of course, to discover, women in technologies and their different journeys, but the idea behind that being to learn from them, right? So we're looking for Tango as a company to connect the larger whole that is the tech community, but primarily from the female perspective, right? But to be honest, we took an inventory last year of, just who we had sitting at the table and the perspectives that we had, and we wanted to kind of broaden that scope a little bit. We just saw that there were some parts and pieces missing, right? So we want to participate in that global conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're taking these next forceful steps to get there, right? We're doing things intentionally and just trying to take that next step and doing so publicly. So we all get to go along the journey with us as well. Now, who is Tango? Tango is working to become the premier nearshore staff augmentation and product development consultancy. And of course, like our culture has always been very incredibly inviting. But like I said, we've taken an honest inventory and determined that we wanted to do things a little bit differently. So we're just looking at kind of making slow changes and intentional changes, bringing you all along the journey with us, but also kind of educating ourselves on why that happens globally, why women and minorities and things like that are pushed to the wayside for certain things and maybe not seen right away in the primary light, right? So as a side note, if you're an exceptional engineer and you're based in Mexico or Latin America, anywhere, and you're looking for a really inclusive environment and a company that's looking to make these positive changes, check out our website, tango.io. And I'm actually going to have my colleague Carla drop that in the chat for me, please. Now, Carla is actually the brains behind the operation that is Women for Women in Technology. It was all 100% her idea. She is the brain and the action behind all of it. But she's graciously asked me to hop on as the host. And of course, super happy to help. It's a cause that I'm super passionate about. So thank you, Carla, for bringing it to the forefront of our minds and just being consistently our voice for this type of intentional change. We're forever grateful for you. But thank you. You guys are going to see her drop new links and reference materials as we kind of go through that in our conversation. So you'll see, keep an eye on the chat. She's going to pop in there with different links, LinkedIn profiles for our different speakers, things like that. So today, we're joined by Natasha and Kelly, who are not only passionate leaders in the tech industry, but mothers as well. And like I said, since we just celebrated Mother's Day, we thought it would be really interesting to hear from mothers and how they have different perspectives within this technology environment, right? And there's certain biases that go along with that. There's just all these things in technology that perhaps aren't seen in the same light. There's how women are perceived and how mothers are perceived are a different thing, right? And so we definitely want to talk about that and put that to the forefront. So with that, our first speaker, Kelly, is going to come on. Let me invite her on screen.
There we go.
Hey, Kelly, how's it going?
Good, thanks.
Good. Thanks so much for hopping on the call today. If you wouldn't mind, could you give us a little bit of intro about yourself and Allied Virtual Care?
Absolutely. So Kelly Prchal, if you were wondering how to say my incredibly difficult last name for anyone out there. So Allied Virtual Care, I'm a co-founder. There are three of us, and that's our corporate name. But our public-facing program is called Songbird Health Program, and it connects seniors to virtual care programs that improve access in four often overlooked clinical areas that have a really significant impact on independence and quality of life, as well as caregiver stress for our seniors. And those 4 areas are hearing, cognition, falls, and behavioral health. And really, it's helping people stay socially engaged. That's one of the biggest impacts across those 4 areas. In addition to having a big impact on our seniors' lives, on our loved ones, there's a significant healthcare spend associated with those 4 areas. We're talking about like an estimated over $300 billion annually in the US. It's hard to even wrap your brain around those kinds of figures. So our program engages and educates folks. We provide self-assessment and educational content and introductions to a network of research-based virtual care programs. We're also testing a machine learning model that helps clinicians screen for cognitive risks, and we will expand that to include data from teleaudiology, so for connected hearing aid devices, and behavioral health and other data on kind of the back end. And this is really the first time that anyone's looking at data from those 4 conditions together. So again, it's hearing, behavioral health, falls, and cognition. And so it's just really exciting to be a part of something that we think can have a big impact.
That's amazing. And what inspired you to make that impact? I mean, what was the driving force there?
Yeah, so I had been working in corporate America in business development and healthcare, and just ultimately, I have an entrepreneurial spirit, but I'm also really risk averse, which sounds kind of crazy as an entrepreneur and someone who's kind of taken this leap. But I left corporate America to work for a different startup and sort of realized it wasn't a fit. But what it gave me was that ability to take that leap and get out of corporate America. And when I left that other startup, I pretty quickly met my current partners, and we started just talking about the healthcare industry and where things were headed and what kind of unmet needs there were. And we found that these 4 areas and the need for access to programs and therapies that could be done virtually or at lower costs, a way to improve access. There's this incredible data, these risks that are associated with hearing loss, like 5 to 8 times fall risk for those that have moderate or greater hearing loss, like 4 to 8 times the risk for dementia, 3 times the risk for depression for women. These massive numbers that when you look at them, we couldn't ignore the data, and we just decided that it was an opportunity that presented itself, and we were a good team to move forward and create Songbird Health Program.
Time to get it done.
Absolutely.
I love it. And without diving too far into your past experience in corporate America, I mean, were there any, I don't even know how to phrase this, were there any adversarial issues that you may have encountered that you can now see things from possibly a different light now, right? Looking from things at that different angle. Is there any advice that you would give to women who might be struggling in corporate America right now?
Sure. I mean, I think I was in several positions that were for sure male dominated. Most of my colleagues were often, my same age. Sometimes I have a master's degree. Some of them didn't, but we were peers, and often they had stay-at-home moms as wives, and that was, to be a working mom and feel like I want to find that balance and I want to get home to be with my family, and I can't stay late every night. That's really challenging. You start to see yourself and you go, well, can I compete here for this particular job? And I think when I started to recognize that and say, this is not the path that I want to continue to pursue, I don't feel like I am giving everything that I have to give. That's what made it easier for me to finally kind of call it quits and say, this is not long-term, ultimately, what I need for my soul.
So maybe recognizing where you're at and whether that's like a true path that you should be on, and just kind of reevaluating your priorities. Love it.
Absolutely.
I mean, it seems like you've definitely found that balance, right? I mean, I have to talk about your website, right? For those who don't know, Kelly has an amazing website where she goes into different like recipes and talks about her home life and her farm life. And what's the website again, Kelly?
It's acharmedfarmlife.com. And it's A Charmed Farm Life on Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, so about 8 years ago, so well before I started this journey into tech and entrepreneurship, I mean, I'm just over a year into that phase. So well before, while I was still working in corporate America, my husband and I decided that we wanted to move to a more rural location, still not too far away, but we got a little hobby farm, and we had one daughter and a second on the way when we moved, and we just slowly but surely kept adding adding things into our life. So I love to cook and I love to eat, and so really quality ingredients are important. And so we got some chickens, we started, getting eggs, and I got bees, and I realized I'm a really terrible beekeeper, but I gave it my all for a good 3 years. And then we realized that we have a lot of maple trees, and so we're now tapping trees and boiling syrup instead for our sweetener in our pantry instead of honey. But yeah, we have now at this point we have about 60 chickens and 5 pigs and dogs and a big garden, and the blog started because my friends would ask, and family would ask for my recipes because I love to cook. And it just was an easy way for me to like put it on a screen and send a link instead of trying to copy and paste over and over again. And it just kind of went from there. I just love to cook from scratch. I think a lot of people overestimate how hard it is. It's not really hard. You just have to be a little bit organized. And that was the impetus for the blog. I put steps along the way with photos, so those who are not really super confident cooks can kind of follow along and go, oh, okay, mine looks kind of like hers. I'm on the right track. So a lot of really family friendly meals that can be cooked often after work, start to finish in not very long time, or something that just requires a little bit of prep, and then it's ready for your family. So everything, across the board in terms of types of cuisine, and also things like bread and yogurt and homemade ricotta, which is super easy, by the way. If anyone has never made ricotta cheese, you need to make ricotta cheese. It is
noted.
So simple and amazing, and it will take your lasagna or even just your toast up to like the next level.
Okay, see, now I'm super interested. I'm going to go find your ricotta recipe and figure out how to make, because I had no idea it was simple. So that's good to know, because I love ricotta cheese.
It's very simple. And for anyone who has to avoid lactose, you can make it with like lactose-free milk. And so then you've got lactose-free ricotta. It's super easy.
I love it. And I love that you're channeling all of these different interests, right? I mean, it seems like such a different contrast from when you describe yourself in this corporate America lifestyle, and you're pushing through things and everything feels difficult and overwhelming, right? But you're still doing all of these things. You have so much attention focused on so many different areas that are genuinely of interest to you. How do you feel like it's just because you are genuinely interested in these areas that you're able to pour all of that heart and soul into it?
Yeah, I think in general, I'm a really passionate person. If you can't tell, that's probably one of my strengths, but it also can lead to stress. I am a person who relies on tools a lot, and I stay very organized. But like I said, a lot of this is not hard. Whether I'm talking about cooking, and like the reason I started making bread was because I got a bread machine. And I started making bread in the bread machine for years before I ever tried making bread outside of the bread machine. And now I make all kinds of bread, sometimes in the bread machine, and sometimes, a hand for 2 days if it's sourdough. It varies, but you learn by using tools, right? And same thing from a technology standpoint. There's 3 of us creating this startup, and we're bootstrapping it. And I'm on the engagement, the client engagement side, the business development, the marketing and branding side. That's kind of where I come in. And my partners are engineers by background, and so we have these very disparate skill sets, which is fantastic because we leverage, we kind of stay in our lane, and we appreciate what the others are doing very much, and we listen and learn from each other a ton. But I am not a graphic designer. I am not a web developer coder. But I use the tools that are available to me to get things done. And ultimately, if you have passion and a drive to figure it out, you will. And so I'm using the web developers, and I'm using the Vimeo. A couple of weeks ago, I was creating some content on Vimeo, some educational videos for Songbird, and my daughter was watching. My older daughter was watching, and she's like, "That's really cool. That I think I could do that." And she said, "I have to do this extra credit thing for math. Do you think I could? Can you help me sign up for an account so that I can create my presentation on Vimeo?" And a day later, she's like, "Let me show you my video that I made," and she used it for her extra credit problem.
That is amazing. So aside from giving assignments to your kids and having them go off and do all of it on their own, which I think is a fantastic asset, I'm for that. What other tips and tricks do you have for any mothers out there who might be struggling and kind of balancing those things, right? I know that kids have got to be hectic. Like, what tools do you use to manage that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of using my calendar for like everything. I know there's project management software and all of that. And if you have a big team that you need to organize, I see the value in that. But if it's you or just a couple of people and you're trying to just manage your own time, like I literally put everything into my calendar. If there's a task that I want to get done, I block the amount of time that I think it will take. I usually end up overestimating, which then I like feel like I won. But I'll block an hour or 2 hours and say, this is what I need to build. This is what I need to create. This is what I need to get done that day. And if I don't get to it, I just move it to another day later in the week. And then I'm never going to miss those things that I want to make sure I'm spending my time on. And it just kind of helps me prioritize. I can move them around. I'm a huge proponent of using my calendar. As far as just like, other just resources and groups, I do think that there's a huge benefit in finding support through others, which is something we're doing here, right? This is super incredible for people to be able to come together and listen and learn. And there are a lot of other ways that folks can do that. There's a new women entrepreneur focused group that I just joined called Entreprenista League. And it's a space where members, they feature your skills, and then you can connect with other members if you have questions or you want help as a resource. There's kind of presentations and regular office hours. The founders are like social media mavens. So, they have office hours. You can go ask questions. I'm finding that to be really cool. I've only been a part of it for a couple of weeks, but the folks that are on there are all really excited and passionate about what they're doing and to share with each other. And there's no way it can't lift all of us higher. So, and then I think for our girls, like as a mom, we have to think about the next generation. And like you were saying at the beginning of the podcast, there aren't enough women represented in tech. There also aren't enough women represented as executives and in the boardroom and in the C-suite. And so I'm on the advisory board for an organization called Girls with Impact. And it's a really cool online kind of like a mini MBA for girls in middle school and high school. They meet for 10 weeks, either, as a class kind of virtually every week at the same time, or if that's too difficult with scheduling, there is a self-directed option. But they learn entrepreneurship basics, finance, marketing, and then they actually start their own business as their final project. And these girls go on to like create real ventures, and it gives them this incredible confidence to walk into any room and feel like they belong, that they are a CEO of their company when they are 15 years old. And yeah, it's so cool. And and it's for all girls, all backgrounds, all means, because they have corporate sponsorships. So girlswithimpact.org, if you have a kid in middle school or high school, a girl, it's just so important that they learn the jargon and the way to present and how to put together a marketing plan, and their college readiness and confidence goes through the roof. The stats are pretty awesome.
I love that. And as Carla pointed out, one of our past speakers, Laura, actually is with Girls with Impact as well. And that's how we got introduced, right? Is through Laura. So it all comes full circle. It all comes back. So aside from being incredibly inspired by middle school and high school age girls who are just out there starting their own businesses, right? Which I think is incredibly inspiring. What was kind of the inspiration point for Allied Virtual Care? I mean, I know there's that passion there, but what was the ultimate crux that made now the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were very, our timing was kind of impeccable. We started talking about this about a year and a half ago. And we were talking about if there was a way to do it within some of the corporations we were already working with. And it was hard to get anything moving. And we finally just said, I think we just need to do this ourselves. And within a couple of months of us starting to kind of put meetings together, and we weren't incorporated yet, but we were starting to try to move in the right direction. That's when everything with COVID happened. And through COVID, virtual care became the norm. And that has taken down a significant number of barriers for folks, especially seniors, who may have been really hesitant to try virtual care, but really through the last year didn't have a choice in many scenarios. And so we've found that virtual care and technology is not the barrier that we thought it was going to be for that population. And that really, I believe, even, over the course of however many of the next years, hopefully things start going back to normal sooner rather than later. But I don't think, there's this expression, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Like there are regulations that have been changed to make it easier to bill and for healthcare to be provided virtually. And folks have experienced it and realized it's not that hard, it's not that scary. And things can be done virtually that seem unbelievable that you can do virtually. And I think with the decreased cost and the ability to get on at any time and not have to, especially for a senior, have to arrange for a ride, and it's just a big trip to even have to try to go to like physical therapy, for example. When you can do it on your iPad or on your phone or on your laptop from the comfort of your home.
And it's interesting how much of that stuff it really does stick, right? You can't put the toothpaste back into the tube in a lot of ways. And it always makes me think of a lot of my past is in restaurant tech, right? So I immediately think of like the menuless experience at a restaurant. We scan QR codes now for menus, and that is how it was probably going to be for the foreseeable future, right? Why would you have paper menus ever again? Like it's the same concept as like, it's so common to just walk out of the house with your mask on right now. So it's just so interesting how those things stick around. And I'm excited that, virtual care is something that is going to stick around. And I mean, I think you guys definitely came up at the right time, right?
Yeah.
Carla, could we get a confirmation that all of our sound and everything is all good for our next speaker? I do have one last question for you, Kelly. Okay, great. One last question for you, though, before we invite Natasha on. Did you have any other resources that you might recommend for women in tech or mothers in tech specifically? Books, articles, anything like that?
I've kind of just been, I wish I was like really well read in this space or something, but I've just been doing as I go, and learning, and like I said, using the tools that are available. There's a lot of ways that you can learn now. There's Skillshare, there's Masterclass, there are all of these things, and I'm just an absorber of content and Googler of everything. And
Totally.
like I said, I just don't be afraid to use the tools. And I find that when you start by using tools and builders, for example, that help you kind of understand the concepts, then it's kind of amazing how quickly you can actually start to get beyond the tools and understand the foundations of the technology that you're using and really get past the tools. But those tools are like, a gateway.
It sounds so simple, but sometimes Google is just the best answer.
Absolutely. Someone else has asked the question before. You know that. Whatever your question is, someone has asked it and probably asked it on Google.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for hopping on, Kelly. We're going to invite Natasha on now, but it was so great to have you on. And then at the end, we're going to bring both you and Natasha on for our Q&A, so stick around. But thank you so much.
Super. Thanks for having me.
Bye. All right. Let's bring on Natasha. We were having an issue with the sound earlier, but I think we got it all resolved.
Oh, can you hear me?
Hey, Natasha, can you hear me?
Hi, I can hear you. Yeah, oh my God. What a wonderful interview. That was amazing. It's so inspiring. I was going to her Instagram, her website. I mean, amazing. I just, when someone comes in and has such a positive energy and they're so dynamic, it's just such a pleasure. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I was going to say the same thing about you. I think you absolutely radiate that same energy. Had I known that we were bringing on two intensive researchers, I might have talked about that right up front. But would you mind giving us a little bit of intro about you, Natasha?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Natasha Pangani. So I'm based in Columbus, Ohio, and I am the CEO, co-founder of OYE Business Intelligence. It's a multicultural, data-driven analytics solution, and I'm also a partner, a co-founder of Nativa Inc. We are a data-driven communication agency. So we have been in business for about 10 years, and just growing and scaling, and really looking forward to all the innovative projects that we anticipate to have in the upcoming 5 years or so. So yeah, this is really exciting. And I'm very pleased just to learn more about other women's entrepreneurs, especially women's in tech. And I know you mentioning about moms. Sometimes people tend to avoid those conversations, but it's part of reality. It's part. And what I'm also starting to see is a shift on the approach, not only from female, but also for men, where dads now are really embracing being a stay-home dad. Working from home. I think COVID-19 also brought a lot of that shift in how we approach taking care of our families, but at the same time being present in the work that we do, and just understanding that we can do everything. We are able to manage and multitask and share perhaps some of those responsibilities that in the past were only delegated to women. So I'm excited. I think there is a lot of positive change coming ahead. As the mom of two teenagers, I think they're seeing, and hopefully they will be influenced by seeing how we can co-parent and share some of the responsibilities. They go from sitting in the desk and answering emails all day to jumping in the kitchen and get the stuff going. So and I think now it's just having this open conversation, and it's okay.
I love it. I love it. And it seems like, data is your thing, right? Data-driven solutions for Nativa and for OYE, like everything is throughout data. So what kind of inspired OYE and Nativa? What is your main passion behind the two companies?
Yeah, great question. So, I'm originally from Argentina. I came to the US 20 years ago, which is crazy. And so I was saying how old I am. I was right when I graduated from college. I finished my thesis, and then my husband and I met during college, and then we decided to, he's from Cleveland, Ohio, so we decided that Ohio was going to be our home. So when I came into the state, I didn't speak a single word of English, but being an architect, it just allowed me to just immerse myself in work, learn the language, and being able to do design. You don't really need to speak the language, I guess, just to be creative and put the projects. But then over time, I realized actually that wasn't the right fit for me. I'm not the kind of person that likes to be just sitting at my desk and design it. And then it takes, 8 years, sometimes 5 years before you see the full project completed. Like, I want to see it now. I'm very impatient. Like, if I put something in paper and I'm brainstorming, like, I want to see it live. I want to see the reaction from the people that I'm designing or doing a project for. So, and communication has always been my passion. I always, since a very young age, going to school, high school, elementary school, every time someone said, well, who wants to present? Who wants to represent? And I was always me. So, so I never had a fear just to put my ideas out there. So, at the same time, I'm talking about 2008, 2005 is when we're starting to see also momentum in the United States, where suddenly we're starting to see how the shift in population was changing and how important was from a consumer perspective to understand those changes and how to better position a product or service to those demographics. And Hispanics, of course, was one of the primary second market. And I also started to realize, for me as a consumer, how much of understanding was from some of the brands trying to reach and position their products. So I kind of started to dive a little bit on that side. I became a consultant from a company in Latin America and starting to do some business development in the United States. And then I decided, well, at this point, I still have an accent. I will always have an accent, and I embrace it and I love it. But I felt confident that I can just go on and I can start writing my emails, pick up the phone and have a conversation, and people can kind of understand what I'm trying to say. So that's when I decided to start my own company. It was a leap of faith. It was right when we had the 2008, the big economic collapse. Being as an architect, the construction industry suffered tremendously. So I had two choices, right? Either I had to just sit back and wait for the market to go back and immerse myself and get in the architectural world, or just start my own company. And that's what I did. I decided to follow my passion. And I think it was very important for me also have the support of my family, my friends. I knew that I'm gonna need some of that support along the way, especially because I was already a mom of two babies. And so yeah, it was an interesting journey. And looking back, it's been just tremendous. I used to go to meetings with my little kids and go to a business meeting and roll the stroller to the corner and somehow, yeah. And my kids learned from a very young age that they needed to be quiet. And my little girl, she was 3 years old, 5 years old, and she used to wear dresses and bring her notepad, and she would sit at the table and she would be part of the meeting. And I love that. And because I wanted them to also understand, what it is just to run a business. So yeah, so it's been, and everyone was very open to that as well. I never had a bad reaction when someone said, well, you know what, we're going to reschedule. Never had that experience. And I think it's also part of, just going in there and said, this is it. I'm a mom, I'm working, and I don't have anyone to watch my kids today. They will be fine. Let's sit down and have a conversation. So that's and why you asking about data analytics. Talking about how consumers or brands were trying to understand the shift in demographics. My business partner is born and raised in the United States from an Hispanic mom, American dad. Of course, I'm an immigrant, so we kind of both represented that consumer base. There are a lot of companies we're trying to reach. And we thought that, when we're looking about the multicultural market, but in Hispanics in particular, they're very diverse. Most companies, they have changed over time with that approach, but 5-8 years ago, many companies assumed that because you were Hispanic, they have to target to you in Spanish. And we understood very early on that wasn't always the case. There were a big segment of the population, especially perhaps the first generation, the second generation of Hispanics, they were consuming and engaging in English. But a lot of the companies, they lacked the data to really understand and make decisions based on that. So when we saw there was a market opportunity, there was a lot of need of really take a big dive into those changes in demographic, consumer behavior. There wasn't really a technology that was able to provide that level of information. So we started really from scratch building a software, and it's still growing. Initially, when we created OYE Business Intelligence, was primarily focused on the Hispanic consumer across different level of acculturations or language, just focusing on Hispanic group. And over time, it has evolved what it is today, which actually our software through machine learning and artificial intelligence is really able to understand and capture conversations from anyone who come from a diverse background and compare those with the general market. So, and within, we do Black analysis, Asian American, Hispanics analysis, general market, but also diving deeper than just in the demographics. We're starting to do also analysis different age groups. So
Oh,
what is the difference between someone, we actually yesterday did an analysis on the beauty industry. So we're starting to see a difference between the consumer who is between 18 to 24, the 24 to 35, preferencing products, perhaps preferencing how they buy and they use different products. So I think that the total market approach, it was one of the primary approach that many brands had, up to maybe 5, 6 years ago. And some brands actually decided to go back to that, and they might not have the resources available to really being able to customize and tailor their approach for each market. But those companies that are really looking to engage to the consumer and create that long-term brand loyalty and making sure that they're actually providing an innovative product and just the right service, they're going to have to start really looking deeper into those data sets and really understanding how is that changing. And if anything, COVID-19 has taught that is that you can't assume and create a strategy that's going to be around for 10 years. You have to be able to be very nimble. You have to be able to adapt really quick. And part of being able to adapt and shift is having the data points that will help you and guide you through the process.
It's interesting some of the things you're saying. I assist our marketing department in like helping with our social media and things like that. And it's some of the things you're saying just are absolutely resonating with me. Like not being able to plan things out too far in advance. There's just daily changes. There's always something that affects it, and being able to adapt that. That's interesting. I feel like we could talk about that for 5 years. But one of the things that I did really want to talk to you about, how we got introduced was through Tanya, one of our previous speakers, right? And she intentionally wanted me to meet you because you're on a paid advisory board seat. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that because I know the statistics around it are, I mean, it's unheard of for a woman to be in that kind of seat, right? But ultimately, a woman of color to be in that kind of seat, like that's, I mean, and completely unheard of, right? So, one, how did you accomplish it? And two, how would you replicate it, or what advice would you give to someone looking to aim in that direction?
Yeah, no, fantastic question. So I think my journey on the board started, I've been involved in different professional boards for many years, since I started my company. That was a way for me to perhaps learn and develop some of the skills that I didn't have, either because I didn't went to a business school, I didn't have an MBA. So being able to see that some of the board table in professional groups allowed me to, one, develop my network, and two, really being able to learn and stay on top of whatever some of the change and news or updates. So I started joining a lot of Hispanic professional organizations, and then I switched to some of the local organizations. Some that were like female focused, were allowed me to really expand my network across tremendous women that were doing incredible work, and they were really sitting at the table at that point, and kind of allowing to develop very organic relationships, but at the same time some mentorship relationships. And I think for women sometimes we assume that role without asking. It's very organic, it's very natural. I think women we tend to support one another. We want to cherish one another. We want to, it's just easy the path for those who are coming next. So I've been very blessed to be surrounding myself for a lot of those women. But I think at the same time, I learned very early on to ask questions, to ask for help, and not be very shy about that. And I don't think there is any shameful. If you don't know anything, ask for it. Because there can always be someone willing to help. But at the same time, you show that you have the initiative, you're showing that you're curious, you're showing that you want to learn, that you want to grow. So that's going to be one of my advice. Don't just be shy, don't sit in the background. Just ask for questions, ask for help, raise your hands, network, reach out, just maximize your network. It's going to be number one. So I started just to sitting in different board, unpaid, nonprofit organizations in different committees. And then I was offered a role at the board of directors with the Girl Scout of Ohio, Heartland. And that kind of took me out aside from professional organization and start serving in something that's still very passionate to me, which is serving other women and young girls. And I served in that board for several years. And then after that, it was very intensive work. I decided just to take a little bit of a break and just more than anything, just being in committees. But something that I have always done, which is really hard when you have your company, is to keep your resume up to date. You never know when you might need a resume. Someone might ask you, and you have to have that ready right away. You can't say, oh, give me a week and I'll send you the resume. It has to be ready. So you have to be very intentional and making sure that you have all the documents or any information that anyone might need. Your bio, your picture up to date, your resume up to date, LinkedIn up to date is very important. The amount of people that will come to your LinkedIn profile and contacted you for a speaking event, board sitting event, anything. So that's going to be very important. Just making sure that you maintain it updated and consistent. If someone comes to your website, to your LinkedIn, to your social media, you want to make sure that it's all consistent in how you present yourself. So through those network and relationships, and because I have seen in different nonprofit organizations for a long time, someone actually put my name when this company was looking. They were looking for a female. They never had a female on their board. It's in the construction industry, primarily male-dominated industry. Is a family-owned business that have been around for more than 100 years, and everyone who's been in the leadership in the company has been a male. But they understood and they realized that the demographic was changing, that some of the clients that they were serving was changing, and they wanted to have a different perspective. So they reached out to one of the organizations that was on the committee, and I was one of the few women that actually they presented the resume to. And when I went to the interview, I was a little bit hesitant. Just because someone offers you a board position doesn't mean that you have to take it. You have to understand if it's the right fit. Like when you go to a job interview, and I think you have to interview them as much as they interview you. You want to make sure that you are the right fit and vice versa. And so I went through the meeting. I had a ton of questions, and at the end of that meeting, I felt that that was the right fit for it. They were going through some succession planning, so changes in leadership, and it was coming the new generation. There was younger, more data-driven, more technology-driven, digital savvy, and then we have the older generation that has been doing the traditional approach, very successful for many years, but they saw that need in how to change, and a lot of the existing board members, they were more aligned with the traditional approach. So one of my hesitation was, as a female, and the fact there was a male-dominated industry and company, will I have a voice? Is my opinion will be heard? And it wasn't easy. The first board meeting was a challenge because my voice wasn't heard. So I have to come back and create a strategy and figure out, how am I gonna make my point across? How am I gonna make sure that if I'm sitting at a table, I want to be heard, but also I want to make a positive impact. So I just changed a little bit my strategy, my approach. It was just a great experience of learning, and I've been in that company for over 2 years now, and we have created such a great transformation, and still going through the succession planning. And I started through that work, started to receiving some other opportunities and other board positions. So I think, and actually we had another board position. And the first thing that I did is I reach out to a lot of women. I wanted to have more women at the table, women that I knew, women that I didn't know, but just by looking at their LinkedIn profile and the connection, I thought that they could be a good fit. So I collected a number of resumes, and I put those resumes at the table. And I'm just very excited that actually the next board meeting will have another women joining the table.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I'm super excited.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's like so unheard of, it blows my mind. Like that is phenomenal. So what I'm hearing is like main takeaways, right? You build your network, right? Your network is your net worth. I'll replay that old adage that we've all heard, I'm sure. Building out like kind of your personal brand and keeping it consistent, your website, LinkedIn, all of that, right? And evaluating, right? Truly evaluating, not just saying this is a great opportunity, I need to take it, but really evaluating if that's the right fit for you. That's amazing. And it's so funny, your passion and your energy, and you remind me so much of our director of talent acquisition. Shout out to Dari. I really think I need to hook you guys up so you can talk, because I'm sure you would have a ton to talk about. She's very much into, we might have her join us as a speaker here pretty soon, hint, hint. But venting at her. But no, I just wanted to kind of dive a little bit more into any other resources that you might have for anyone in our audience, whether that be women in technology, people looking to, or women looking to join advisory boards, but also specifically mothers in technology as well. Any other, aside from bringing your child right into the boardroom, which I love, by the way, but any other advice that you might have for anyone who's struggling in that?
No, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of seminars, webinars that women can do. There are books. I think that there is one book that's called Women's in the Boardroom, or the Boardroom Game for Women's. I can't remember exactly the name, but it's specifically for women that are open and want to have that seat. So I highly recommend that book. And look in your state, look in your city. I'm sure there are a lot of organizations for those in the state of Ohio, the Midwest, as well, Women for Empowered Leadership development, and actually they do have a training for females that want to go to the boardroom, and they do different trainings throughout the year. So it's an opportunity just to learn a little bit more what is required. I think it's very important to then define what are some of the skills that you can bring to the table. Cybersecurity is in high demand right now. If you have any background in finance, merge acquisition, understanding P&L is extremely valuable. Technology, of course, is very important. Innovation, communication. So there are different areas that many companies are really looking now to bring into the table. And we're starting to see also a different approach. And I think some of the technology companies, of course, are leading in that, is that they actually are open to bring not only females, but perhaps people who don't necessarily have an experience in the boardroom, because they come in also with a perhaps unbiased approach and a very innovative mindset, and just trying to have a combination of different experience at the table. I think that is becoming very critical as the creative process, and how to really stay up to date and maintain your company just in that innovation in it. So we're starting to see some of the top companies that are hiring or bringing to the boardroom actually younger individuals. They are extremely qualified, very innovative, and I think that's gonna really start. We're gonna start seeing more and more and more. And I think that comes down again to anyone who is aspiring to do that. Be prepared. Have your resume is completely different than your board resume and your bio. So you need to have your bio, you need to have your board resume, and your regular resume. I know it sounds like a lot. There is a lot of templates. If you just look online, LinkedIn is tremendous in the amount of resources that they have. And it's just start looking, how people are presenting themselves. What are the characteristics that you have? What is the experience that you have? And sometimes what you're looking for in a board is not necessarily the experience that you have at work, but also outside the work. How you relate to the community? What is some of the work that you have done? Perhaps, could be community services or a church, or even with your kid. There are certain characteristics that you might not think that is important, but it's actually bringing something very unique and very needed. So, and as for help, I'm more than happy. I'm always open to connect with new people. So I'm easy to find. It's just Natasha Pangani is everywhere in LinkedIn and Twitter, in Instagram. So, if anyone wants to reach out and is working on their board resume or the board bio, and they want to send me that, I will be more than happy to take a look. And I'm always also doing the same. So if anyone wants to take a look to my resume and provide some feedback, I'm always open to it.
I love that. I love that. I'm always here to help, but also help me. Anything you have, I'm here for it. I love that. I love that. And I think it very much speaks to that kind of humility energy that you really bring to the table. And I just appreciate you so much for hopping on with us. We're going to move on to our Q&A session. So I'm going to pull Kelly back on the screen here. But if anybody has any questions or anything that they're itching to ask Kelly and Natasha, both or individually, you can drop a question in the little questions box or just drop a regular comment. We do have one question here. Question for Natasha. What is your experience with cultural differences between Latinx and American work culture? Any advice for people working from Latin America that are working with American managers? It's a great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, so I think I actually I did a presentation with the U.S. Department of State a couple months ago, and it was with entrepreneurs in El Salvador. So United States is really trying to develop and foster relationships with Latin America, especially the new administration. So there can be a lot of opportunities coming up for anyone who is from Mexico all the way down to Chile and Argentina. So, for anyone who's interested to do freelancing or start the company in the United States, just follow the Department of Commerce and the State Department. There can be a lot of news coming up. But some of the advice, I think, is just understanding some of the cultural nuances. In Latin America, we do things a little bit different than the United States. So you need to understand perhaps, and it's hard, it takes time. It's not something that you can read somewhere. It's kind of like you learn as you go. But for instance, I'm from Argentina, and when Argentina, we say, hey, we'll have a meeting at 12. No one show up before 12:15. And and it's okay. Like everyone understand. If you are there at 12:05, everyone's like, "What are you doing?" We said 12. Why are you on at 12:05? So, but in the United States, it's not like that. If you have a meeting at 12 o'clock, you better be ready at 12 o'clock. Right? If you say, I'll send an email right after the meeting, I'll send some bullet point, and you send that email 2 days later, you already make the wrong impression. So understanding some of those nuances and especially how we do business in the United States is a little bit different than Latin America. So I think, and reach out to people perhaps that you have in your network. They have come from Latin America and are doing business in the United States. They can kind of guide you a little bit in how to do the business. In the United States, actually, people are very open and kind, and they like this face-to-face interaction a lot. So if you have the opportunity just to schedule a Zoom meeting or Google Meet and just connect face-to-face, and I think being authentic is something that is very important. Being authentic is something that translates to being trustworthy. So I think, be your authentic self throughout.
And how would you recommend kind of setting those expectations, right? Because now I'm thinking about my particular instance. I'm going to be selfish for a minute and ask a question for me, right? I'm obviously based in America, and a lot of our team is based in Latin America, right? So this is a really interesting question for me in particular. What can I do better, right, to set expectations for our team, and what better things could I learn to maybe better understand that perspective?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think, definitely, I think it's just being punctual, being respectful. I think if you make commitments and what you're gonna deliver those on time. Ask as many questions as you needed, and don't assume what the other person might be understanding in the meeting. We have different ways to communicate, and perhaps what we understand that the scope of work of a project might be completely different what that person or the clients that you're trying to work understood. So I think as an advice is after any meeting, maybe just follow up with an email and make sure that you write up as much as you can from all the conversations that you have on the phone, just to make sure that you didn't left anything out. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and I think having perhaps some of those open conversations right up front, and just being open and say we have a team working in Latin America. Perhaps the communication might be a little bit different at first. Let's work together. And if you set those expectations for both parties right away, I think that will really open up and just make the relationship a little bit easier throughout.
Love it. Thank you. I appreciate that. And we have a question for you, Kelly. Are there differences in the way that women and men get healthcare?
I mean, absolutely. The studies recently that I've seen have shown that women are often the family decision makers for healthcare. And that comes from being a mom a lot of the time, and making decisions for your family, but also for your parents as they're aging. And one of the things that we are focused a lot on now is starting to create more content for caregivers, because a lot of the stress for especially the things that we're working on, like cognition and hearing and depression, and falls. I mean, a fall can mean not being able to live by yourself anymore. And so these things have significant impacts on your ability to live independently. And as a family, a burden or a requirement to do more. And it's a focus on how the family can support aging parents in a way that helps stay healthy. And so we're producing a lot of content now about that's really geared at educating not only people about how to stay healthy themselves, but also caregivers.
Love it. Love it. And it's interesting that you say there's like a different kind of burden on women in a lot of ways, right? And I guess I had never really thought about it, but definitely getting closer and closer to that stage in my life where I have family members who rely on me for that kind of thing, and
Yeah.
that's really interesting and relatable.
Well, and there are so many stigmas in the things that we're talking about, and and yet they're very much overlooked. So a lot of the healthcare for our parents and grandparents is focused on heart disease and diabetes, and they want you to lose 50 pounds and change the way you live completely. And what we're focused on is something as simple as educating and saying, if you need to wear hearing aids and you wear them, there's evidence that shows it can decrease your risk for falls and dementia and depression. And these things will have a major impact on your life. So a lot of that is just focused on stigmas and how to overcome those stigmas, and how to be approachable when talking about these challenging topics. Dementia is really scary for a lot of people to think about and talk about, and depression and hearing aids. Folks we're talking to, well, I don't need that, and they wait way too long until it's had an impact on these other areas of our lives. And we all want to help our family members be healthy, and just having that knowledge base to talk about, if you just get hearing aids and wear them, it can have this major impact on your life. It's being armed with that education and those materials to have those conversations. That's so important.
Oh, there we go.
Did I
think we had a
freeze?
technical difficulty there for a
Yeah.
minute. I'm not sure if it was me or you, or I want to talk about these cards. I'm so glad you just brought that out. That was going to be my question. These are my favorite thing in the world.
So these are called DigiCards. And actually, the gal who started the Entreprenista League, they're at hellodigicards.com. She's gonna be so excited you wanted to talk about them, because I was on a panel with her, and so I got a bunch of swag, and these were in there, and it's like a whole deck of these cards, like all these things that
I love that.
help you communicate. Or even like there's one that says I have to go, so you don't have to interrupt.
Yeah,
I actually pull them out a lot.
I love that so much.
The frozen one, I often am frozen, and so I've switched it from you are frozen to I am frozen.
And I think we need both, right? Everybody needs both. Stuff happens, Yeah. Well, I know that we're coming up on time. Does anybody have any last minute questions or comments for Natasha and Kelly before we say goodbye for the month? Closing out
Natasha,
our third episode.
There was one thing you mentioned about LinkedIn and the importance of keeping everything current, and I think you're so right. And one thing I wanted to mention for those who aren't real confident on how to present themselves on LinkedIn, or what are the things they can do to be seen more or represent themselves to their fullest on LinkedIn. Actually, a friend of mine is the LinkedIn gal, and it's something that she does, and she can help you with doing a review of your LinkedIn profile. She's an expert of all experts, and gives suggestions. She actually has a little course that it's like a self-directed course that you can take to help optimize your LinkedIn. And the paper resumes are important to keep. People still ask for them, but honestly, we're all going straight to LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where the real info is at. Awesome. Well, we'll be sure to we'll find that resource. We'll get that from you, Kelly, and get that sent in the email out to everybody along with the recording. But thank you all for joining our third episode, and we're super excited to do this again next month, last Thursday of the month at 2 p.m. Thanks, Natasha and Kelly. I really appreciate you hopping on.
Thank you for having me.
Bye. Thank you so much.